So hi there. It's the 17th. And so yesterday we started about emphasizing the priority of prayer, how that it's important that the believer prioritizes prayer. And today we're going to be looking at structures and systems that the believer can put in place. You see, because out of all of these things, the most important thing to learn about these things is if Jesus prioritized prayer, then we as believers should prioritize prayer. Prayer is not an optional thing. Prayer is the believer's life. And so, take for example, it's a believer, you're trying to learn how to build a consistent prayer life. He does, you see, you sometimes is learning to start small because the goal is consistency. The goal is you're going to be doing this thing for a lifetime. And so you want to make sure that you build a structure that will give you that time, that will give you that ability, that will produce that strength in you to go the long haul. Prayer is for the long haul. So you're trying to build a consistent prayer life. As you know, wherever in the works of life, oh, I have a busy schedule, how can I have a busy schedule, my this how do I still build a prayer life in all of these things? You see, sometimes there is a saying, right, that you give priority to something that's very important to you. You always make out time to something important to you. And sometimes making time for something important will also mean sometimes making sacrifices. You see, this is something that the believer ought to learn. That you see, in part of these things, we make sacrifices for the greater good. You know, I think in business there is always a term of there's always a delayed gratification, sort of, where they talk about you delaying, it's like you delaying the gratification of now, the enjoyment of now for the later, for the longer, for the later thing. And so what am I saying is, this is something you must learn also as believers, that making priority, putting God first, making prayer a priority, sometimes will mean making sacrifices. And guess what? The sacrifices are worth it. You see, one of the things that you must understand about God is Hebrews chapter 11, he says that those that seek him diligently, right, they will surely find him. It's something to learn. When the believer seeks God, he also finds God and all of that. And it's important to have that consciousness at the back of your mind that every time given to God, there is always something, there is something that happens to you as a result of that experience. So you must give priorities to prayer, build structures in your life that will create room for prayer. Sometimes, and just what, like I said, sometimes making those priorities will mean sometimes making sacrifices. There will be days when you have to make sacrifices. Now, the sacrifice depends on you now in your context and all of that. But make no mistakes that in these Christian experiences, there comes a point in our Christian experiences where sacrifice also, it's the language you must understand. Sacrifice is a language you must understand. That although it's not convenient now, but because there is a reason, there's a priority you must have about it, then you must give attention to it. Because of the importance that God has in your life, then you place a priority on Him. Yes, I could have chosen to do this at this time, but because of the priority, that because of the esteem you have in your life, think about the dumbest things you've done for love, and think about how far you were ready to go, right? Just think about in that perspective. Now, in the same way, you must also have, in the same way, have that perspective also to the things of God, that God is what pursuing, God is what making the sacrifices for, God is what prioritizing. That's something the believer ought to understand. So as you go through this week, that's something for you to learn, that God is hot. He's is what prioritizing, is what pursuing. God is what pursuing. Make priorities, make that sacrifice. Amen. Glory to Jesus.